Hello, theme park enthusiasts, and welcome back to Planet Coaster. In this episode, I'm going to do one of my most elaborate builds in the park, as this is not just a single ride, but it's really an area for the park. So here, I'm going ahead and building the road connecting the area by the Sky Ride over to the road that goes over by the pizza place and such. And then what I'm doing is I'm putting in some smaller rides here because what I'm wanting to create is basically a kids area. So there are going to be multiple rides in the area, and there's going to be a small roller coaster for the area. And we're going to end everything off then with putting in a miniature golf course. So lots going on in the episode. First things first, I want to go ahead and get these rides placed. So we're getting them sort of where I want them, thinking about the sight lines for the front of the park, as well as how they sort of play with the road that goes around here. Now, I don't feel like these need the longest lines ever, so just put in basically a fairly short queue line with a fast pass here, because all the rides in this park are going to have a fast pass. I hadn't thought about that here with the garden tours, so I did put in a fast pass there just as I thought about it. Then just changing up the coloring to be what I want for the park. And with that, yes, it is a second Ferris wheel. We have the big wheel there in the back, but the big wheel, just with its sheer size, I'd say is almost more of an adventure style ride than this would be. This is more of your classic Ferris wheel. This would have definitely been in the park earlier than the big wheel. And again, it just would have been something that older people would have enjoyed possibly, as well as people with children. And so as time went on, this part of the park just added more and more features for children, and that way it just sort of sprouted up to be this thing that was going to be a kids area of the park. And I felt like that was a nice contrast, having it sort of on the opposite side of the monster from the garden area. So the garden area, I feel like, is more of a more adult area where somebody who's got, a significant other could go and enjoy a peaceful time in the garden. The park itself doesn't really have set areas, but they would have evolved over time and just they would have played up that notion to the guests as time went on, is sort of the thought I have. So that's what's going on here. Putting in this would be more of a modern kids ride that would have come along as time went on to sort of fill in for the needs of having more kids things. As you can see, I'm not really doing much here as far as the theming and stuff. We're simply just slapping down the kids' rides, which, when you've got the young kids like this, they wouldn't care too much to have theming around their rides. They just want different rides that they could enjoy. So that's what I'm sort of going for here. That's the overall goal. And I think it really works for this area of the park. And as I said, this is sort of a really elaborate build overall. I mean, we're only about 4 minutes into the video, and we've already got multiple rides set up for the kids. Really what I wanted to focus on this episode is going to be, for one, building the kids coaster, which I am going to do something that's not going to be your standard kids coaster. I know I could have gone with something a lot less complex, but I wanted something that was, as far as they would be concerned, thrilling. And so I left the space open here, so that way I was able to put in a coaster. We went with the dragon coaster here because, again, I just would want something that would grab attention right away for children, and I felt like the dragon head on the coaster worked more for that than the other one would have. Now immediately I wanted to color it so that it fit into the color scheme of the park, and then I did do some actual research on these coasters to see about how tall I could get away with and stuff and still have it be realistic to being a kid's coaster. Now, as I said, this one's going to be a bit more elaborate. It's going to be longer than a standard kids coaster would be and such, and I understand that. But it's one of those things that I wanted to do something a little bit unique for this area to give the kids something that was sort of their own and sort of special. So originally here, I go ahead and actually even theme out the actual building itself in sort of a castle motif. I wouldn't so much call this real theming as just my thought process on it was the park would at least attempt to sort of make something that would play on the idea of the dragon. So they would at least go with sort of a cheap castle look to it. And I wanted to put in the entrance and exits to it before I actually built the coaster because I wanted to see where exactly I would need to put track in order for it to work with what I've got going on, because I've got all these rides going on. So this coaster is a little bit more of a challenge than a lot of them because of the fact that it has to fit within the footprint. As you can see here, the more I thought about it, I didn't like the actual the stonework and stuff on it. I felt like it didn't fit with the park overall, and the park, while it would want to cater to the kids a little bit, it would still do something that sort of fit more the actual park itself. And for a coaster like this, this is not a big draw. This is just something to appease the younger audience. So I felt like, more of an open feel to the place would actually possibly work. So with that, I just went with some simple posts here. And then we'll put some fencing in as well. And as you've seen before, I've been trying to use this sort of roofing. I have not found buildings that I really felt it fit with too well. So I tried that, didn't like the way it was feeling either. So then I went with this brick idea. It's sort of castle-y in theme, but it's something that fits more with the park overall, as there are several brick buildings to the park. If you recall from one of the previous episodes, we did have like the train building. Several of the train stations in the park had this brick layout to them. So I felt like that was something that fit, and then I could do posts on the upper part of the building, and that would be acceptable. And basically I deleted those pieces of brick there just so I could sort of see where it was that the posts fit, just to basically line it up and make it more uniform. Then simply copy them over to the other side. And I did raise the brick up slightly above the station there, so that way it creates its own sort of balcony, or its own chair rail, I guess, in a way, just to make sure that the kids are safe in the location. And here I'm just looking for a light that I feel like works with what we've got going on. I felt like doing something a little bit interesting, a little bit different. I felt like that would be something that would be interesting to the kids, and at the same time still fit with lighting up the place well. So I felt like these square lights really worked here. They're a bit different, they're a bit unique, and it would be something that would be unique and interesting to the children, hopefully. Now, because we do have kids here, even though I did raise up the brick some, I felt like I still needed to have some kind of railing there just to make sure that no children fell off the side. So I'm trying out the different styles here, just trying to find something that I felt like fit. Part of this is that it's not only the railings that are part of the game, but also I found railings in the workshop that I really liked. So I almost have the issue of too many selections to go through. And came across this one, I sort of liked what I saw in it. I felt like it fit what I was trying to go for here. So was able to go ahead and just put those in between my wooden posts, but blend them in because the colors are the same. And again, it's just sort of creating that fencing so that children don't fall off by accident, get injured. Realistically, as I said, the station's very, very basic, and that's very intentional because it is just a kiddie coaster. It's not going to be something that they've spent a lot of money on the station for because of the fact that the ride itself isn't going to be a huge draw for the place overall. Even kids themselves probably go on it once or twice while they're there. It's not going to be something that they rave about for a long, long time. So as I said, I was looking here at what I could get away with as far as height and stuff because I did want to make it a thrilling kids coaster and I wanted it to actually be a bit longer and more elaborate than your standard children's coaster. I was then struggling with getting the back end here to actually work with the pathing and decided, you know what, maybe I need to actually go ahead and do the train track first and then go ahead and deal with the pathing afterwards. And you probably have noticed in several videos, there are times where it's like I'll be working on something like the track, and then I just decide, you know what, I need a break from it, I need to take some time and just work on something else. So I go back to working on the roof here, and then I go ahead and work on some of the lighting for the ride. Because while I like the look of those lights, they really don't give off the amount of light that I want them to. So I'm just going with a standard trick here of getting some of the floodlights, putting them through the building so that it's lit up the way I want it to be, and then sinking them into the ground. So that way it casts the light that I would want those overhead lights to cast, but they just don't in the game. Then I felt like since I created a flat roof, it would have been the kind of thing they would have done because they would want to make the building fairly inexpensive overall, but they would put some kind of trinket on top to make it sort of stand out because they would want the kids to like it overall. So I felt like, you know what, I could go ahead with the same type of design that I had on other buildings, and even though it's sort of over the top here, it is a kids area, so I felt like it worked. So we get the lights going on the sides here. And then we just go ahead and copy the entire thing to make a duplicate over on this end. As I said, definitely nothing special, nothing overly elaborate at all. I looked at things for the center area there, thought against it in the end. And after taking that time away to go ahead and work on that, I get back to working on the track here. So with this kind of coaster, you're not going to have the steep drops, you're not going to have anything too thrilling, but I did want it to sort of carry through this area some. I wanted it to play around with getting good views of rides like the Helter Skelter and such, and I also wanted to, you know, play around with some of the posts from the Sky Ride as well. So here I'm trying to make it work where I have it playing around with that, but at the same time keeping the speed and such it needs to in order to get through the different twists and turns that I'm creating. So I knew I wanted an upward helix here, but I had to get it to work height-wise and such, and the ones that were in-game didn't work, so I decided to go ahead and make my own. Then I decided, I wanted to go around the post here for the sky ride and nearer the Helter Skelter. So in order to do that, I had to extend the flat area at the top there a little bit, which works because then it doesn't just get up the lift hill, but it actually gets to go a little bit, start to pick up its own momentum before it makes the drop. Then I decided to put in a few bunny hills there, and again see how it does with this. As I said, I really wanted to fill up some of this dead space I felt was created by the midway that I had created in the last few episodes. So I felt like this coaster going through this area really achieved that some. And same time here, I wanted to go ahead and make something, as I said, that would be sort of for the younger audience that might be here. Now I'm sort of grappling with how to make this work as far as the pathing goes and such. And then I like the idea of the brake run sort of going over that portion of the pathway and stuff. So that way as the kids are walking up to the ride, they get to see the train go overhead. Just a little something that would be enjoyable for them. And basically here I'm just testing to make sure what I've put in so far is not too stressful on the track, anything of that nature, and that we're still good as far as speed and whatnot. And then, as I said, I wanted to play around more with the Skyride track because I think it adds interest to the train. And I mean, we're talking about a very basic kids coaster, so I wanted to make sure that it had entertainment in some aspect with things like playing around with the legs of the Skyride. So here, couldn't go up as high as I had it before, so had to lower it a bit. Obviously, I have to make a smoothing pass on all of this because right now it's very rough overall, but it does make it through, so that works out great. Happy with that. And now I can begin smoothing my track, basically leveling it off and such so that it fits more what I'm wanting. Here I decided I thought about putting in a hill. I go back and forth on it a little bit, and I want to see how it runs. Because for me, always, especially with these kind of coasters, first thing is, does it make it through the track overall? And then I want to see how it is as far as the stresses on the track and such. But overall, it does pretty well. It's a little bit scary there at the beginning, but then it sort of levels out. Then it becomes a bit boring at the end, so I put in a little bit of a dip there just to see if I could make it a bit entertaining there at the end for him. And then I called it good. So here come back my favorite beams again, because the fact that I'm trying to hide these silly posts that they put at the entrance to the rides. I have found on the workshop other ways of hiding these posts, but I felt like for this part I wanted to continue what I had already started, and I wanted to go with using those. And in this case, I'm going to use them as the ride sign, Because again, this is a children's area, so we're not going to do the big lighted signs like we have in other areas. Instead, we're going to have these cool jester hat and hands holding up the sign there. It'll just be attached to the post as it is. So now we've got our roller coaster. We have the other small rides all the way along, but I wanted to add in another feature because now I know sort of what I've got in these different locations. So first of all, I'm going to go through, put the signs for the different rides here. We'll call that one the Octo Wheel. And this one, we're going to just give a storyline by naming it Billy's Balloons. Don't know who Billy is, maybe he's the jester. Might be that this whole area is his little play area. Then I realized, ooh, the only problem with these signs is there is no light to the signs. So I needed to go ahead and add some lighting to them since I don't have my standard lighting of the fairy lights going on here. So I created these, go ahead and put them in on the different signs just to make them work for what's going on here. And I will need one more of these for the Ferris wheel as well. But as I said, now that the coaster's in, I could sort of see, okay, this is the area I had left. So I put in that extra pathway there, which as I said at the beginning of the episode, what that's going to be is going to be our actual golf course area. And then this would have been named later on at a point in time, probably would have been the big wheel. But we've now got the very big wheel that we have that's sort of in the area of the monster there. And so this has now been renamed as the little wheel. Here I'm just going through putting some lighting on this coaster like I have on all the other coasters in the park. So that way it sort of stands out and has its own attraction for people. And basically what I've found I like to do, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it's what I like to do, is I like to put lights at sort of the highlight points of the ride. Basically your big hills, any of your helixes, things of that nature, so that way it shows it off for the people who aren't on the ride. That way they're sort of drawn in by it. Now with this path, it's a bigger path, so I needed to modify the sign to make it work here. And of course do have to turn the lights because of the fact that the sign has been made bigger in this way. Now I do call this fantasy golf. What you're going to see in this episode, not a lot of fantasy to it, but I will, when I'm doing the theming and the flowers and stuff at the end, probably put some added theming into the golf course area as well. Here I just wanted to put an extra sign in, basically to let people know this is the exit to the fantasy golf area. So don't go in here, you need to go around to the other side in order to get in. So then the first thing I wanted to do here was to put in a little bit of a wood building that's going to be attached to the sign, and basically this is where you get your golf clubs and stuff to do the miniature golf. Now again, this would be an upcharge type of thing for the park. It wouldn't be just something that's just given to you, same as sort of the pedal boats that are over in the other section. It's something that, yes, kids would want to play the miniature golf, so they would pay probably a couple bucks extra to check out clubs and golf balls. And in a way, it's actually brilliant at the same time for the park because of the fact that while they're making this extra money, they're also taking some riders away from the rides, so that way the lines on the rides don't get to be too long. So it has sort of a dual purpose there to it. Here I was able to just get one of the static characters that somebody had created, put them into the little window there so it looks like they're basically functioning to take care of the people who come in to get their golf supplies. and why I get some pillars that worked here. But really, the big ones just I felt like didn't work for this small of a building. They sort of seemed like overkill. So instead, I went with a different type of pillar that it sort of matched into more what I had done at the garden building for the garden tours. And then, of course, I had to bring in my fairy lights because we do need those in parts of this area. So that way it sort of fits into everything else that's going on in the park. Trying to get it all copied as one so that way I can just go ahead and switch it over here and then take the lights over and put those on there as well. Then again, with this building, they really wouldn't have spent too much time making it as extravagant as some of the buildings for more the adult areas and stuff. Because again, this is just a little kids area. They're going to see a few lights on it and stuff and be happy with them. They're not going to notice that the edging isn't done exactly like it is at the adult areas and such. Because it's not going to matter to them nearly as much. That being said though, I did still want to make it look nice overall, so we are putting in these added beams and stuff up here just to sort of give it some cohesion. As I said, it's not the nicest looking building in the world, but it serves the purpose of what it is. It's going to give you your club rentals. So at this point I was also thinking, do I want to put anything across the road from this area? And really, I went back and forth on it because I felt like this was sort of good as it was. And it almost sort of forms a boundary for the edge of this part of the park. So with that, I really was sort of torn about putting anything across the road. I felt like if I did, I was just going to be expanding too much and just having too many things going on in the park. And really, the whole purpose is this is a smaller park. I don't want it to be overly extravagant. So, as I said, I feel like the lights here fit overall. It works for what it is. Here I'm just continuing to fairy lights along. And got tired of doing the fairy lights for a little bit here, so now I'm just going to go ahead and put in some of the golf clubs along the wall here, just like they're hung up there on pegs, so that way if you look into the building, you've got those golf clubs there. We'll say that the balls are underneath the little window there that he's got, so that way, yes, there are the balls, but it's not something that I need to add into the building. Then I realized they sort of weren't in line with the view and stuff, so I went ahead and lowered them there. So that way they work out a bit better. Did want it to have sort of a window feel to it here, that, you know, there was an area to put things onto. So we're putting in just another beam to fill in that space. And we'll just put a golf club down on it. As I said, golf ball wise, didn't really feel like I could find any that were working as I wanted them to. So just went with the golf clubs there. I think they worked out alright. Basically there I was just measuring to make sure that this would fit inside the building properly, and just going ahead and getting it so that way we have lighting inside the building. Unfortunately, my measurements didn't seem to work out there for me, so because of it, I ended up having to use the smaller beam and just fitting it in and making it work all the way across. So that way he has light in there and doesn't just look like some creepy murderer that's gonna, kill the children instead of give them a golf club. So here basically I'm going ahead and I found several different types of miniature golf courses that I could use on the workshop. This was the one that I felt like fit most what I was wanting in the park, so I went ahead and used it. Again, as far as what I'm going with the fantasy theming and stuff, it's going to be very, very minimal. This is, as I said, something that really is just put into the park to get more money out of the guests. It's not something that they really put a lot of thought into. It's just something that, hey, we've got different type holes here and stuff, so that way they can enjoy the different challenges. Now they had them organized in a different order than I'm putting them in, but I sort of wanted them to fit in a certain way in the park, so I'm moving them around to sort of get them onto this area and fitting the way I want it. Basically bringing the land up to meet the different holes. And there we have it. Sort of each hole is sort of an offshoot from these different walking areas. And as I said, this isn't an area that will actually be usable by the guests, but I felt like it added visually to the area. We have all these rides that are usable, so guests will come into this area overall, and this is a pathway that they can use to go ahead and walk back and forth. So here I was basically over at the Helter Skelter because I could not, and I always struggle with remembering what it is that is the name of these posts that basically draw people to come look at the area, take pictures, things of that nature. And again, I want people to basically come over here and sort of be using the area, even if they're not truly using it. So what I had in mind here was I would go ahead and hide that post with a sign for the actual different hole of the course. And that's what I'm doing here. So basically, I wanted to go ahead and have it. Then I wanted to use a beam of some kind to hide the fact that that existed there, and then go ahead and put my sign attached to that beam. There's basically a lot of trial and error to sort of figure out what fit. I felt like some of these were just way over the top as far as size and stuff, considering how small the holes are and whatnot. So it was one of those, just trying to figure out what would work, what would block out that beam overall, and would still actually look like it belonged there. And so this is sort of what I went with in the end. Here I'm just changing the colors again just to match with the overall theming of the park. Now that I've sort of got proof of concept that it worked there with the first hole, I go ahead and put vista points at each of the different holes. and then I go ahead and move my sign over to fit each different one. Now I'll change it to the different hole number, and again I'll go through here and change the coloring of the different sides so that they fit with the color of the park. But with that being said, I feel like I've covered pretty much everything that I was doing in this episode. So I will go ahead and let you enjoy the music and watch to the end here as I finish up this kids area of the park. If you've enjoyed what I did in this episode, please go ahead and click that like button. If you've not already, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so that you're aware when I produce new videos in the future. Thank you, and I hope to see you again for more Planet Coaster and more of Appleford Amusement Park.